All right, you guys, good morning. We're going to get started. And just FYI, we have two classes here. We have RP 18 and then Augie's class, I think they're RP 20?
20, yep.
20, big 20. Awesome. Broke into the 20s now. This is being recorded too, so if there's any question that you want to visit again, it'll be posted in the usual spots. But today we have a guest speaker, Josh Shaman. He is, let me make sure I get this title right. He's admissions and enrollment manager, and also for HackReactor Remote Beta, and he's also the remote prep and personal tech coaching manager. So he's got a lot of hats at Remote Beta, but he's here mostly to give us a little intro to Remote Beta and then field any questions you guys have. Totally bring up anything with him. He's willing to spend a lot of time answering any questions you have about the immersive. And yeah, let's welcome Josh, and I'll pass it over to him.
Thank you, Nissa. So before we get started here, I just want to share that I am sick today, so my voice sounds a little weird, and maybe I'll be coughing and taking some breaks for a drink and whatnot. So I apologize in advance. Also, my name is Shaman, not Shaman. Nissa.
Oh man, Shaman. I'm so sorry, Shaman.
That's okay. Everybody says Shaman. That's okay. Anyhow, so it's good to be with all of you this morning and to see you. I see lots of familiar faces in here and familiar names. Lakita, let's see who else. I've seen you before. I feel like I have seen Raymond before. I've seen Vivian's name for sure, but I've seen a few of you in sessions before. Yes, Shaman. It's nice to see you all though anyhow, and before we get started, just some quick questions so I can figure out a little bit about you guys. I know you all know how to do the BNP thing in the chat. So how many of you, this was your first time doing any programming, taking remote prep? You can put a B if it was your first time and a P if it wasn't. Okay, most of you had some sort of experience before. How about first real class? Yeah. How many of you had been like self-studying for a few months already? Oh, yep. Awesome. Okay, cool. Looks like most of you. That's all helpful to know. Yeah, obviously, I'm going to be talking to you about our immersive programs today, and specifically about remote beta. How many of you are at least somewhat interested in attending one of the HackReactor immersives after finishing remote prep? Incredible. Okay, cool. Well, let's go ahead and jump into it then. I just wanted to see where we're at and what your interests are, what your background is a little bit broadly. Obviously you're familiar with remote prep now, and I'm sure you're kind of familiar with the immersives. So, we'll do a bit of a deep dive, but, I won't bore you too much, hopefully. So you know that the immersive programs are like the 20 to 120 programs. So you need some level of programming skills and expertise coming in. So that's why you're in remote prep, I'm sure, for those of you who are interested in taking an immersive. For some of you too, it was just a curious first step, curious foray into programming and what is programming. Maybe you've decided at this point you're interested in pursuing it as a career, and maybe becoming a software engineer is something that's really exciting to you. And maybe for some of you, you've decided that's not the right path for you. But I'd like to share this information with you and help you to make your decision one way or another. So basically, we have a 20 to 120 program. The remote program is actually super unique. It's pretty state-of-the-art. I'm actually finishing my master's degree next month, and it's in education. And I'm taking it by distance, and it's totally different from the remote beta immersive. You guys are familiar with how a remote classroom works at HackReactor now. You know that you're constantly engaging in video chat and on Slack, with your peers. And I think in most traditional forms of online learning, like master's degrees or any kind of distance learning, at a traditional university, and lots of online courses you may have taken before for JavaScript or another programming language. They tend to be asynchronous, and they tend to be things that you could do in a correspondence type fashion. But for our immersive program, I think that's what's really incredible is you'll spend 6 to 9 hours a day interacting with your peers on video chat using Zoom, using Google Hangouts, using Slack. And you'll do things like town halls and whiteboarding. You'll do things like meeting up with your class counselors and coordinators that gauge the social emotional health of the class and help guide you through that part, all the non-tech stuff. And just in general, pair programming throughout the day, of course, takes up the majority. So, this kind of remote learning is super exciting and super interesting to me. And when I first moved out to San Francisco, it was right around a year ago. I heard about Hack Reactor, Dev Bootcamp, App Academy, General Assembly, all the programming schools and all the schools that teach some sort of software engineering stuff. And I was really excited about them, and I interviewed at a bunch of those places. And when I interviewed at Hack Reactor, I interviewed at the remote program, and I was really blown away by what they're doing with remote education. So to me, that's something that is really next level, next generation of e-learning, and it's super exciting to me. So prior to Hack Reactor, I was a teacher for about 6 years, and I've wanted to stay in education, and this was a good way for me to do something that's on the forefront of education and would allow me to pursue that dream. But for you guys, you're probably curious, less about my career and more about your own. So you're thinking about, what can I do to be successful in Hack Reactor Remote? And I think pretty much the same concepts apply that would apply for remote prep, just taken to a more extreme degree. So the three things, first thing I would say is working hard. Now, these are all going to be common sense, but bear with me here. Working hard, approaching the program with an open mind and positivity, and number three being asking for help. So these are all common sense, right? Of course, if you want to succeed in a program, you will work hard in the program. And of course, if you're working from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., 6 days a week, Pacific time, of course, you're going to have to work hard. And of course, if you're negative in your experience, then you're not going to have a great experience, and it's going to be difficult to get through the program. And of course, if you don't ask for help, it's going to be challenging to actually get through the program in a way that's useful for you. So it all sounds like common sense, but saying these things and doing them is entirely different. And of course, being positive as you're getting bombarded with new concepts and new frameworks and all kinds of computer science kind of stuff as you're rolling through the immersive program, remaining positive and being open-minded and saying, I can do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to learn all of this stuff. You may have already experienced that challenge in remote prep, right? It's difficult sometimes to remain positive, to remain open-minded. It's difficult in the immersive program to crank out 11 plus hours a day, in high efficiency mode, and to get through that. And it's difficult sometimes to ask for help because, it's just part of your personality, maybe part of human nature, maybe. Sometimes you just want to do it yourself. Sometimes you feel like it's embarrassing that you don't know something. Sometimes, you don't want to be asking questions repeatedly, but these are all things that are necessary to succeed in the program. So one of the, a number of the HIRs that I've spoken with in the past said that going through the program, it's like trying to drink water out of a fire hose. The new concepts are just coming at you every day. And you're not always going to learn everything 100%. And maybe you've already experienced that again in remote prep. But that's, it's something you just have to do is keep working hard, keep getting as much information solidified as possible, while understanding that this is a curriculum that's been, you know, it's been reworked and rehammered and reworked and rehammered, refactored, over the years, since Hack Reactor has been around for, I don't know, 3.5, 4 years now. And probably at this point, I know several hundred remote alums have finished our program, and I think in total, probably at least a couple thousand people have been through the Hack Reactor network. So it's a well-vetted curriculum. The process is well-vetted, and you just have to trust in the fact that working hard, pushing through it is going to get you to the goal that you want. And then we talked a bit about open-mindedness and positivity, so I'll skip on to asking for help. Obviously, we have a help desk, which right now you may be using office hours, or you may be connecting with your peers. But one of the really nice things in the immersive program is, of course, we have help desk, and you also have a tech mentor, and you have the non-technical team who can always help you and support you when you're having difficult moments, whether they're related to the curriculum or what's going on in your life outside of the program. You've always got people there to support you and to help you out. And then, of course, about the schedule. The schedule is Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific time. But in terms of the breakdown, usually people are curious, what do I actually do in the program? So in the first 6 weeks, you go through front-end frameworks, back-end frameworks like front-end Angular, React, Backbone, back-end Node, Express, blah, blah, blah. You do algorithms, data structures, advanced programming concepts like recursion and inheritance, and then you'll learn about databases and development tools that you'll use as software engineers. So that comprises the first half of the program. Second half, you form teams, you work together on projects, including the thesis project at the end, and you'll have the ability to start creating production level applications, which are complex and which are actually really meaningful and show your skill level. These are things that, of course, it's not going to be as developed as say, like, I don't know, like the App Store, or as the Uber app or something like that. But they are really significant apps that people are building out in the final half of the program, and then for the thesis project. And certainly should not be diminished, the quality of these projects. So actually, I'm going to turn to one of the HRs who's here, who wants to tell us a little bit about their thesis project. Maybe we can get a couple of you to do this. Zan, do you want to start and tell me tell us all about what you did for your thesis project?
Yeah, sure. So the thesis project, let's see, I worked in a team of 4. And we built an app called Speakeasy that's a public speaking trainer, and it used several machine learning APIs to take in a user's submitted video and analyze their facial expressions, their voice and the tone of their voice, the content of their speech, and kind of analyze that and give them tips and pointers on how to improve that. And it also had a social element on there. So you could make videos public, and then other people in the network could come and comment on those videos, so that you could also get feedback from other users to improve your speeches.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. And when you think about it, Zan, I'm sure if you go back to, I don't know, a few months back, when you're starting the immersive program, it must have been really crazy to think that you could do something like that, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. When I was in the thesis, I had a day where I looked at the code and I realized, like 3 months ago, I wouldn't have even been able to figure out what was going on in this code, and now I'm architecting it.
Yeah, and actually, several people here, including Zan, are remote prep alums themselves. So I think that's really exciting. Remote prep started over the summer and of last year, and I think our first cohort was July 13th. And so at this stage, we're getting lots of people coming through the program who started out in remote prep. So I'm seeing people that I met initially, like Nissa, I met in an info session before remote prep, and of course now she's a baller instructor. So how about Nissa? Can you tell us a little bit about your thesis project?
Yeah, my thesis team, we also were before. We built an app called Scout.io that leveraged public photos, like apps like Flickr. We let a user search based on a given location for public photos near them. Our target user was a film scout looking for a location to shoot a production. And then we took that data from photos and passed it into a couple of mapping APIs to show them what access was like for that location. So if they were looking for a specific location that looked like, the Alps or like an alpine lake, but they wanted it to be in Mammoth Lakes, California, then they would get a display of photos, see which one most closely matched like the look they were going for based on also like the time of year they were intending to shoot their production. And then when they clicked on the photo, they would get more information as to like exactly how you would get there. A lot of places like involve hiking or driving and don't have like drive up access. So, and then from there, we just did a lot of database stuff as far as letting them collaborate with peers on locations and save to their own personal kind of portfolios.
That's really cool, Nissa. So you can see the range of stuff that people do for their thesis projects. I mean, it's all super complex and actually incredibly useful, but very different topics and ideas for things to do. I see Augie here also. Augie, do you want to talk about yours?
Yeah, sure. So my thesis project was I was on a team of 4 people, and so what I focused on was deployment and front end. So I did a lot of CSS and work with React and Redux, and a lot of deployment stuff. What it was what it is a streaming service for musicians to live broadcast their concerts and their gigs to their fans. So it was really cool. We used WebRTC, Node, Express, a couple other deployment technologies that they actually don't teach at HackReactor, but part of the fun thing at thesis is you come up with this idea, and HackReactor is giving you all these great tools for how to learn, not just what to learn. And so you're able to rapidly pick things up. So I was able to pick up how to run a Linux server on my own and use Nginx for HTTPS and setting up reverse proxies, all this really super advanced stuff that for HackReactor, if you would have said, hey, can you do this? I would have just been like, no. But after HackReactor, it's like, these hard things come up that you don't know how to do, and you're not afraid to tackle it, and you have a really good approach for tackling it.
That's an awesome point, Augie. I think that just recently I was speaking with an alum from Remote Beta 2, and he got a job, and his job had some JavaScript, but then a lot of what they wanted him to do was in Ruby on Rails. And he said at first he was kind of nervous and scared about doing that. And then he realized, like, I actually know how to just pick something up really fast these days, and I can get it done. And now I think for like the last year or so, he's been doing pretty much everything in Ruby on Rails, and he's kind of an expert at that by this point. So it's a really cool point that you brought up there, Augie. I don't think anybody else is here from the HRs, right? Okay, cool. So that all happens in the final half of the program. Also in the final half of the program, and of obvious significance is some outcomes support. So you'll get some support in developing and crafting your resume and cover letter, doing mock interviews, and then having some outcomes coaching so that when you're doing your job search, you can actually make a career transition, and you'll be prepared for interviews. And they do all kinds of incredible stuff. They work with you to understand like, if I do this number of applications, I should get this many phone screens, this many on-site interviews, and this many offers. And if it's not working out, if the formula is not applying to your case, then they can help you to figure out why. Maybe your cover letter needs to be tweaked, or maybe your resume needs to be tweaked, or maybe you haven't highlighted something about yourself that's actually really, really critical and you didn't realize it yet. There's all kinds of support they can offer, and they have a lot of expertise in the area of coaching and career search. So that team provides a lot of support in the last couple weeks of the program, and then also is available to you as you're in your job search. So to wrap up here, with this portion before moving to the Q&A part. I just want to mention something that's always been incredible to me is the staff here. So you have experience directly with our HIRs. You know, they're really a strong part of our backbone. You know, developing curriculum at times, developing program ideas with us, developing new ways of implementing our offerings, helping us to understand, you know, who is a good fit for our program and who makes sense for our program. All kinds of things like this as they're doing technical interviews, teaching remote prep, acting as a fulcrum mentor, you know, doing things like pre-course, helping people with pre-course, help desk, all kinds of stuff. So our HIRs are incredible. For our non-technical staff, we have the admissions team, which is me, and Angelina Davis, who is our admissions associate. And of course, we work with people from this early point in remote prep and prior to remote prep, all the way into the program as they join the immersive. We have the general manager, Adrian, who has his hands in everything and is always available to support. These days, he's been doing a lot of work on outcomes to help out on that team. He does a lot of stuff with growth and admissions as well, and just pretty much supports everywhere. And then, you know, we have the class coordinators, class counselors. We have Liz Penny, who is the head of delivery. You know, they all support on the immersive side when students are having issues on the non-tech side, you know, in project management, helping you know where to go next and what to do next. And, you know, we have the outcomes team. We have the technical mentors who, you know, will be your technical teachers and help work you through the program. And the incredible thing about all of these staff members and anyone that I've left off the list, all of them have blown me away with their commitment to the students and to the program. It's like, you know, most of the schools that I've actually been in as a teacher, where you go in and the staff really, really cares about the students. And I wasn't sure if that would be the case in you know, in a different context. You know, working as a teacher, of course, you would hope all the teachers in a school for children or a high school or something, you would hope that they really care about the outcomes of their students. But you know, in a for-profit company, that was one of the things that worried me when I was first looking for jobs in this field. But I was super blown away by Liz and Adrian when I first met them, when I was interviewing, and all the other team members. And then as we've continued to grow, the commitment to hiring people who have those interests in their hearts. So that's something that's really special about our program, and that I'm really proud of. And then finally, of course, most of you already know this, but I just want to mention the outcomes. So within 3 months of finishing the immersive, 95% of alums have found work, and the average starting salary was $94,000. And I guess the thing that's most impressive to me about that is, you know, that includes San Francisco, of course, for students who are here, but it also includes places like Charleston, South Carolina, or Cleveland, Ohio, Denver, Colorado, or Portland, Oregon. So it's including this really wide range of people searching for work in the U.S. And it's a really good statistic to have 94,000 and then 95% of alums finding work in 3 months. So with all of that, I think I'll try to give my voice a little rest here and listen to your questions and respond to you. So if you have a question, I would love it if you could drop your name in the chat like this, and then I will get you queued up and I can answer your questions. We have around a half an hour, so I can take quite a few questions, and I'm happy to stay for the whole time. And if you have anything else that doesn't get addressed, then I can take your questions by email. Let's jump to Chris.
Hey, Josh. I was wondering if you could just explain Fulcrum and the difference between Fulcrum and remote beta prep.
Sure. So actually, I think I'm going to defer to Nissa here. Nissa has more direct experience with that. But on a high level, remote prep is it's It's a guided curriculum, right? So you go through the classes, you show up at regularly scheduled times, you have an instructor, and Fulcrum is more self-study. You have this curriculum, and then you work on it at your own pace. So those are two big differences, obviously. And then remote prep was actually designed for people who have 0 to a little bit of experience in software engineering or in JavaScript engineering. And Fulcrum, on the other hand, is our pre-course work and is designed for people who have a little bit more experience. But Nissa, you probably have more granular information than me.
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of it. Like remote prep is live. You get a lot of chance to pair program. And as you're working on problems, like kind of have immediate help, like you guys do in Slack, ping Zan or I, and we're kind of able to jump in and try to help explain something. Fulcrum is more self-directed. You have access to a curriculum and you work through it on your own. There are a couple check-ins that you have with Fulcrum, like kind of 1 hour check-ins that check kind of a summary of the work you've done, and you have a chance to, chat, cover anything necessarily that you want, but it's more on like a scheduled thing that'll happen twice during, or possibly more, but at this point twice during your Fulcrum enrollment. The concepts covered, if you started Fulcrum after remote prep, you'd find like a lot of stuff that you're just already familiar with. You're like, oh, you know what? I know what this is. I covered it. But you would get into concepts that we don't get a chance to get into in remote prep, like headier concepts. They're not concepts that you would need to know or master to be ready to pass a technical interview. I would say that after remote prep, we've touched on and covered all the kind of concepts that we would want you to be familiar with and comfortable with to be able to interview for one of the Reactor core schools and be prepared for it. So that's kind of different. Fulcrum will cover those concepts again and go a little bit further, but the main difference really is just the style of learning. Anything more than that, Chris, I can answer for you, or anybody else with Fulcrum questions you had about it? Cool.
Yeah, and just to add on one piece there, so the offerings that we have, the programs we have that come before the immersive are remote prep or another prep course. We have Fulcrum, and we also have personal tech coaching. Personal tech coaching is a one-to-one coaching that it happens with an HIR. It's free. It's on a case-to-case basis that we refer people to that. If they technical interview with us and then we decide that it makes sense, then we'll refer them. I don't think other schools offer it. It was a program that we developed in Hack Reactor Remote, but it's twice a week. You meet with an HIR who is a personal tech coach instructor, and they work with you to identify what your technical gaps are and how to fill those in. So the correct path may be different for each person, right? So some people might take remote prep, and then they might interview and they might get an accept. In fact, like 70% of people who have taken remote prep and interviewed at a Hack Reactor Immersive have been accepted. But for other people, they might take remote prep and then personal tech coaching, or they might take remote prep and then Fulcrum. There's different paths for everyone. And some people, of course, will take none of those programs and just interview because they have enough experience already to pass the technical interview. So I did want to point that out. Let's see here. What is that 2 days a week thing? I don't know what that is. We have remote prep 3 days a week as a 7-week program, but I'm not sure what that is. Let's come back to that in a second. Julmar, you can definitely jump in.
Hey, would you be able to go over any of the key differences, or if there are any differences at all, between Hack Reactor on-site and remote?
Sure. Yeah. Actually, I can go over differences between all of the schools, but basically, it's geographic. All of the schools offer the same curriculum, 99.9% the same curriculum. We do have Mobile Makers, which offers a different curriculum because it's for iOS app development. But Maker Square, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Austin, Texas, and now I believe there's another location. And then Telegraph Academy, Hack Reactor Remote, they all use the same curriculum. So, of course, the staff will be different from place to place, but there's a high standard for the staff everywhere. And the geography is different, right? So you'll be in a different location. For remote, the obvious difference is that you're not physically somewhere. So it gives you some sort of flexibility to live wherever you are and to continue job searching there afterwards, or to move to San Francisco afterwards if you're choosing to search here. For some people, they have family or other constraints that prevent them from wanting to move somewhere. Some people, it's a financial constraint, of course, wanting to stay where they are. So in terms of like the differences, that's pretty much it. It's just, it's the same curriculum, just you're able to do it wherever you are. I guess for remote too, you'll have recorded lectures versus live lectures. So some of the lectures, more of the lectures in remote are recorded. Some people like that because it gives them the flexibility to rewatch at any time and to watch it like maybe 1.2x speed if they need to get through some parts faster than others. Maybe some people would prefer all their lectures to be live. But I think, we've had a lot of people who were planning on doing an on-site program and then they took remote and were really happy that they took the remote program. So if you go onto Quora and you're interested to learn more about what the experience was like for people who came through the program, go onto Quora and look at our reviews. And there's quite a few people on there who mentioned initially wanting to do an on-site program and then doing the remote program. So I think those are interesting things to read for people who are curious about both. But to be clear, I think the big difference is just, obviously you're not physically touching somebody or next to somebody or, something like that. Cool. How about Dan?
Hey, how's it going? So Jamar actually got one of my questions answered pretty well. I guess I have a couple. You can cut me off if that's not okay. But I was hoping maybe you could talk a little more about Maker Square. I'm a little curious about that one. And also, I guess I'm curious why the different programs have a slightly different hiring / salary rate, even between just like the Reactor core schools.
Sure. Yeah, I think, if you have some specific questions about Maker Square, you should write to their admissions team because I won't have information about that. But, basically, I think it was around this time last year that they were acquired by Hack Reactor, and they had a different curriculum back then than Hack Reactor, of course, and then they adopted the curriculum that we have, and we actually have had a lot of students from remote prep, of course, go to Hack Reactor Remote, and then also to Maker Square or to Hack Reactor Onsite. The prep from this course will get you to the level where you'll be able to interview at one of those places. But in terms of anything else I could share with you about what's different about their program, again, the curriculum is the same, and so a lot of it's about geography. Hiring rates or salaries, of course, those will vary. If you look at remote versus Hack Reactor in San Francisco, you're talking about a program that's taking people from anywhere in the United States and even internationally, and anybody who's looking for work here is included in our statistics if they're actively searching for work and they're trying to find a job in the U.S. and they're eligible for work here. Then they're included in our stats, and so that could include people in Pittsburgh or in Dallas or in San Francisco. So of course that leads to some differences, and then in terms of other schools from school to school, I'm not sure about the statistics of other schools other than Hack Reactor and Hack Reactor Remote. But I would guess, similar things apply. Like the LA market is different than the San Francisco market, which is different than the Austin, Texas market, and so on. So hopefully that's helpful there. Sorry, it seems like there was a second part of the question that I'm not remembering right now.
No, that was pretty much everything. I guess my real curiosity in that one was, it makes sense that, it would just vary all over the world, but I guess I was wondering if it had anything to do with the reputation between the schools. I mean, Hack Reactor seems to have a little more of a tenure, I guess, in the tech industry, as opposed to Remote Beta, which is still kind of new.
I don't really think that's it, actually. Although it's an obvious conclusion that I think you could draw that perhaps that's the reason. But I haven't really seen a case where, there's a lot of students coming to us saying, they said because I did Hack Reactor Remote, they don't want to hire me. I haven't really heard that. So I can't confirm that suspicion for you.
Can I add something to that as well?
Please do.
A lot of people on their resumes just put Hack Reactor for the name of the program. Some people put Hack Reactor Remote Beta and go into an explanation like that, but a lot of people just put Hack Reactor on their resumes. And then once people talk to them about it, they kind of let them know, hey, yeah, this was a remote program. But it's the same curriculum, so I don't think anybody has any problems with just listing it as Hack Reactor.
Yeah, I'm not sure what our outcomes team recommends there, but I do know that for sure there's going to be people out there who are skeptical of any of our Hack Reactor or Maker Square programs, or Telegraph Academy or whatever it is. I think in San Francisco you'll find people are more open to non-traditional educational, avenues and pathways. Maybe if I were to look for jobs where I'm from, which is around Dayton, Ohio, which is close to Cincinnati, I think people there would have no idea what a Hack Reactor is or what a Maker Square is. I think you'll meet people who are skeptical, but I think, if you're in a tech hub kind of city like Portland or Seattle or San Francisco, or even actually Austin and Dallas are quite good with tech, LA, New York, etc. Those people oftentimes just care, can you do the job? If you can do the thing, that's what I care about. And wow, that's a cool project that you made, and what else have you worked on, and that kind of stuff. Thank you for the question. So
yeah, thank you.
No problem. I see some stuff about the personal tech coaching, so I'm going to quickly get into that. PTC meets twice a week. So if you take a technical interview, we may suggest that you do that program, but not everybody is invited to that program or recommended to that program. So it's people who tech interview with Hack Reactor Remote may be referred to personal tech coaching. It's a really great program. You meet twice a week with an HIR. You guys work together to schedule your sessions, and they help you to fill in your technical gaps and to understand what you're lacking, and they give you homework and things to work on that will build your skill set. Let's see. Trying to find the next name in here. I
think it was Julmar back in the rotation.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm at 938 there. I see that. Okay. Cool. Julmar, go for it.
I'm curious, since the curriculum for all the schools in the Hack Reactor family are the same, why isn't the admissions interchangeable if you get into one school in particular?
Yeah, that's a fair question. Definitely, if you get accepted to one program, it does not guarantee your acceptance somewhere else. If you get rejected from one program, it doesn't preclude you from getting accepted into another school. But if you think about it, like I try to, people ask this question sometimes. I try to remind them of something like, I don't know, I guess it's not as comparable, but something like the University of California system, where you would have like UC Riverside, UC Irvine, UC Santa Barbara, UC Berkeley, with different partner schools. Each school has its own admissions team, and each school has its own processes. So basically, the curriculum is the same. The technical bar is roughly the same at all of the places. So the difference is that it's just different staff, different marketing, different admissions, different, of course, tech and non-tech staff who run the program, and each school needs to be able to have its own ability to accept or not accept somebody. So I don't know. I don't have like a super well-defined answer for you. As to why you can't get in one place but somewhere else, except to say each school should have its own autonomous decision-making body, and that's how we operate. I can tell you that just because you get one decision at one place, whether that's an accept, a reject, or a lockout period, it doesn't mean you'll get the same thing somewhere else. Let's see. Scott.
No, I'm good. You just basically answered that. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. So then I will take Sarah after Scott after Jumar.
Yeah, so purely hypothetically, of course, if someone were to do prep and find that they really felt like they had more work to do before trying to get into the immersive, would their purely hypothetical performance in prep reflect negatively on their interview at all?
So prep performance is not really a criterion in the admissions decision rendering from us. So, if somebody told us something alarming about a candidate, we would take that into consideration. Or if somebody, like for instance, if an instructor said to me, this person literally never showed up to class, that might be interesting to me, right? But if somebody simply had less experience coming in and finished at a place where they needed more time to study, or if somebody had the same level of experience but it's just taking them a little longer to get to the place they want to be at, that's not something that would hurt you in the admissions process. Let's see, Raymond.
Yeah, I got a question. Do we need a MacBook for remote beta?
The answer is no. People have done our program with Linux or Windows. But that said, I know I always hear from the HRs, like documentation is written for Macs for the most part, and it just creates more work if you don't have a Mac product. Zan, Nissa, Augie, can one of you chime in and tell us more about that?
Absolutely. When I started my pre-course work, so I was already accepted to Hack Reactor, and I started pre-course, I was on a PC. And one of my biggest frustrations with the pre-course work was having a PC. So Augie had a Chromebook. Yeah. No, I have a gaming PC. So I have like this like super like god machine over here that I was using for development, and it was horrible. When it came to installing all the software and stuff that I needed to do, I was having to look up all these instructions. And of course, and with anything with development or engineering, there's 10 different ways to do everything. And so I basically completely screwed up my system trying to install all this other stuff, and got to a point where I was just so frustrated I went out and dropped $1,500 and bought a MacBook. And I wouldn't switch back to the PC for development ever, just because of the ease of getting programs and software up and running on the Mac as compared to the PC. I also heard a rumor towards the end of my cohort that they were thinking about switching the requirements so that you either had to be on Mac or you had to be on Linux because of how difficult it is on a PC. So that's also something to take into account. That I don't think they did switch it yet, but I knew they were talking about it.
And I was just going to say, well, and one solution for that, if you do have a PC, you can install a program that does that runs a virtual machine, and so you can create a. Unfortunately, you can't install Mac OS on anything but a Mac machine. They have protections on that, but you can install a Linux environment on your PC if you don't have the money to get a new computer. So there are kind of routes around that if you're using a PC.
Yeah, thank you guys. And I have not heard what Augie mentioned about a requirement that would drop Windows from environments that we support right now. So if that were to happen, I'm sure there would be some advanced notification on that. But it is possible. If Augie heard it, then it could be true.
It was a rumor, so I'm not sure. Honestly, I can't remember where I heard it, but I heard it somewhere, and it was like, oh, okay. So it could totally be like something that was, said 5 people away from me, and I just heard it that way.
Augie was just dreaming about Windows being destroyed. No, it's possible. I don't know. I haven't heard anything, but I'm not keyed into that stuff as much. Vivian.
Yeah, hi. Just an extension to Raymond's question. Since the new MacBook is likely to come out soon, and I'm thinking to upgrade my MacBook Pro, and then do you recommend MacBook Pro over MacBook Air, or you think they both will work the same for the immersive?
Deferring again. I do know, of course, that the processing power and the RAM included on a MacBook Air is not as high. And I will tell you that when I use like Skype or Zoom throughout the day on my MacBook Air, sometimes it gets a little tired and I need to give it a restart. But I'll pass to somebody else here.
Yeah, I would kind of second what you were saying, Josh, where you have to think about the fact that you're going to be, I mean, most of the stuff you're doing for the actual work of development is not going to consume a whole lot of computing power, but you're going to be on video all day, and a lot of times you're going to be on a video that's got a whole bunch of different, like you're meeting with a bunch of different people, and that can slow down your computer a little bit, especially if you start to you've got 9 tabs open because you're researching documentation for some software you're working with, plus you've got the video open. And then especially if you ever decide to add a second display, like you want a second monitor that you're running off of your MacBook, that takes up a lot of processing power to be rendering a second screen. So I don't think the MacBook Air is going to keep you from getting the work done, but it definitely is a little bit smoother of an experience if you're working remotely to have something that's a little more powerful.
Okay, thank you. I guess the Pro is definitely worth the little bit extra weight than the Air then. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, to just sum it up, it seems like both options are acceptable. You'll just probably have a better experience with the Pro. I actually elected for the Air. I had the choice back in the day, and I elected for the Air because of the weight thing. It's not that big of a difference. I just went that route. Let's see. Anybody else with questions? We still got about 10 minutes left, and I'm happy to take some more. I know you guys probably talked with your instructors and TAs already about about the program if you're interested in Hack Reactor Remote or another immersive. So I'm sure that many of you have already gone that route. But feel free to drop a question here. Yes, Scott.
Hi. I was wondering if you could maybe shed some light, if at all, on the application process itself, like knowing that, given that we would all know what we would know coming out of remote prep, is there any one topic in particular that we should drill above anything else given the application? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'll do a high level thing, and then I'll defer to an HIR here. But yeah, the next step from here, if you are interested in joining an immersive, I would recommend that you apply immediately. And even if you're not that interested, but you're just thinking about it or mulling over, you should apply and just get yourself in the system. once you fill out the application, all you have to do is, it's a really simple thing. You go on the website, you do the coding challenge, which for you guys at this stage should be very manageable. So you go online, you'll do the coding challenge. You can select the schools that you want to apply to, and you can just submit the application from there. And then you can actually set up your technical interview. So before I forget, I did want to mention the last day to interview is coming up. It's actually the 26th for remote beta, if you're interested in the April 18th cohort. So, if you're going to apply, you should apply now. I recommend that everybody does it, because a lot of people, they're really interested in applying, and then they kind of put it off for a while, and other things start to get in the way of them actually following through on what they wanted to do. So I recommend doing that early. Scheduling the interview with the final week to interview being next week, and with you wrapping up your class next week, I'd recommend that you schedule it for the end of next week, maybe the 26th, the 25th, 24th, if you're interested in the April 18th cohort. But regardless of which cohort you want to join, you should schedule early, particularly for this one, because the final week to interview is crazy and everybody tries to interview. And we always do our best to keep up with the demand for that. But people always wait to last minute, of course, to try to get in as much study time as possible. So if you're going to book it up soon. And then in terms of the interview and what content you'll want to be familiar with, I'll defer to an HR. But before I do that, Benjamin, to answer your question, Benjamin Richter, some people who interview, they get lockout. It could be like 3 months or 1 month or 2 weeks or some other amount of time. If you get a lockout and then your remote prep instructor thinks you're ready to re-interview, then they can notify us and clear you to re-interview earlier than that lockout. So that's one of the benefits of doing remote prep, is that maybe you can actually re-interview after just taking remote prep, if your level is correct and your instructor thinks so. So Benjamin, you can speak with your instructor about that. And then let's have maybe Augie talk about some things. Obviously, we can't go into too much detail and just tell you what the interview is, but Augie can tell you a little bit about some high-level stuff you might want to study.
Yeah, I just to let you guys know, I'm a remote prep instructor, and I'm also a technical interviewer. Just to give you guys a heads up. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to tell you some things that aren't on the interview that are in remote prep. So there will be no HTML, CSS, or jQuery covered in your interview. So you don't need to focus your studying for the interview on jQuery or HTML and CSS. Some things that are on the interview are higher order functions. So you're definitely going to want to know all the ins and outs of higher order functions, how to use them, and how to create them. And if you really focus on that, you should have a solid skill set to go ahead and take that interview and do really good on it. And remote prep really does prepare you very, very well for the interview. So,
awesome! Thank you so much, Augie. Let's do Ben's question here.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, how much in advance can I apply for a certain cohort? Because the issue is that I'm finishing my studies at the end of July, and I plan to join, or if I got accepted and everything, to start with Hack Reactor in September. So when is it possible to apply?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Ben. If you apply now, then that's still okay. Once you get accepted into the program, if you receive an accept, your accept is valid, I believe, for 6 months in Hack Reactor Remote. I'm not sure what it is for other schools, but for us, I believe it's valid for up to 6 months. And the reason I would recommend interviewing earlier than later also is, let's say that you interview and you don't get an accept, but you wanted to join the, let's say the June cohort. So maybe that still gives you enough time to interview a second time before the cohort starts, right? So that's another reason why you should interview earlier than later. And in your case, like I said, it's valid for up to 6 months. So if you applied now and you schedule your interview for a few weeks from now, you could do that. You could interview in April or something, and that would give you enough time to be ready. The other thing I should mention is, of course, pre-course work. I'm sure most of you are not in Fulcrum, of course. You're in remote prep. So you will need to do pre-course unless you choose to do Fulcrum. Pre-course is released 8 weeks prior to a cohort start date. In this case, you might be saying, hey, wait a second. It's about 4 or 5 weeks until April 18th. So what happens in that case? Well, pre-course takes about 50 to 80 hours to complete. So I've seen people do it in like 2 or 3 weeks pretty routinely. And I've seen people take the full 8 weeks. It just depends on how much time you can commit to getting it done. So if you can only do 10 hours a week, then it might take you 8 weeks to finish it, or 6 weeks to finish it, or something like that. And of course, if you can commit 20 or 40 hours, then obviously it takes you less time to do that. So I can take one more question and then we'll wrap up here. Raymond.
All right, one more question. Would you say it's a bad sign that I couldn't do some quarter byte problems even after doing remote prep?
Augie?
No, that's not a bad sign. Some of those coder byte problems are really tricky, and some of them cover concepts that don't even get covered fully until you go into Hack Reactor. But if you can do most of the coder byte stuff, then you're fine. And if it takes you 2 or 3 hours to do one coding problem, that's no biggie. But yeah, you're fine if you can't do all the coder byte stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Augie. I had no idea how to answer that, so I'm glad you're here. Yeah, I think you guys got a lot of good information here today from me and from the HIRs who are here. It's possible, of course, that you didn't get everything answered, though. So if you still have questions that did not get asked, or if there was something you wanted to ask and you just didn't do it, please write to us at remote.beta.admissions@hackreactor.com, and we'll be happy to answer anything that didn't get answered. As I said, the next step from here is to go on to the admissions challenge on the website and fill out the application. To confirm your application, you should set up your technical interview. So first, you'll go ahead and you'll do the application. It shouldn't take you too long. And then once you finish that, you'll get a next steps email. In that email, you can register for your technical interview. If you look and you're saying, well, I don't want to interview for 2 weeks from now, well, then you just set it up for March 26th, or if you're trying to get into April 18th, or if you want to do the June cohort, you could set it up for May, even May 1st. You could set it up. There's lots of dates available pretty far out. So even if you're not ready to interview right now, I would recommend that you apply this week. You register for your technical interview, and you can set that up for sometime really soon, or even a few weeks down the road, or even over a month down the road. It'll send you automated reminders telling you when your interview is coming up and all that stuff. So even if you set it up pretty far in advance, you won't forget it, because you'll have it. You'll have those notifications that come in via email. So if you have any questions, like I said, write to us at remote.beta.admissions@hackreactor.com, and either Angelina or I will be able to reply to your questions. And of course, thank you all so much for coming to the session today, for sharing some information about your backgrounds and experiences with me, and what concerns and questions you have. And of course, thank you so much for taking remote prep. It's been a program that we've had definitely well over, well, I'd say a couple hundred people have taken remote prep now, and it's been less than a year. It's been a really successful program for people who are interested in joining an immersive, and just for people who are kind of curious to take a class, about programming. So it's a really great way for you to learn more about programming and becoming a software engineer and taking steps toward that journey. And we're really excited that all of you made that choice. So thank you so much for doing that, and keep in touch anytime.